Hello, everyone. Welcome to another show today. No? Here with me today is a very young CTO. I would say young, no? Probably less than 40, obviously. Uh, Albert Padin. Albert, can you say hi to our audience?
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here.
I'm
I mean, do I
totally.
have to say longer or just like just saying hi
No.
wherever you are?
Yeah, that's great already, no? Anyway, we our first question is, Albert, can you describe your current role for us? What is it to be a CTO at your age, especially?
Okay, so maybe since we're talking about age, I'm 33 years old. I'm currently CTO of Symph. I'm also the co-founder of Symph. So I started the company um, about 10 years ago. This is with Dave Overton, our CEO. And what I do in as a CTO, since Symph is basically an agency, we make websites and mobile apps for companies for money. I kind of joke like that for money. Sometimes you get equity, but usually for money. Um, and so my job as a CTO is really like making sure that we're creating the right solutions. We're creating scalable technology solutions, technology software solutions, and at the same time leading the team in the technology that we're supposed to embrace. So a lot of my current role is actually looking into the future, seeing what technologies are going to become relevant in the next 3 to 5 years, and then
Mm-hmm.
figuring out a plan how to steer the team to learn that. And so either we're internally learning these technologies and adopting them, experimenting with them, and eventually adopting them, or we're recruiting people that for those roles. So yeah, I would say that in a nutshell, that's my main responsibilities.
Cool. Now, you did mention that you co-founded Symph almost 10
Yep.
years ago. So
Yep.
roughly giving you age of 23, no? So that's very young, no? Maybe you can tell us about your professional journey. How did that happen from maybe high school, I don't know, or even college? What led you to
Okay.
IT, and how you are currently?
Yeah. So I like to joke around, but it's not a joke that
Mm.
IT is actually not my first choice.
Wow.
Yeah. So if we think about when I was in high school and about to enter college, I was pretty sure, and I wanted to become an electrical engineer. So
Mm.
I was idolizing Nikola Tesla at this time. You know, if you don't know, he's the guy who invented electricity. Um, and so I kind of like idolized this guy, and I wanted to kind of like follow in his footsteps. So I wanted to become an electrical engineer, but life has its ways. So we had financial issues. Like my dad couldn't support college at that time, so it was like a slump in our financial situation. And then so um, there was an opportunity. I was given a scholarship by the school I was going to at that time, the school's CIE, and they were quite generous to give a scholarship for college. And so, but the only available courses were business and IT.
Oh.
And I said, like, maybe I don't want to do business, I'll go with IT. So that's how I ended up in the IT field. That's sort of like how I ended up with IT specifically. But if I were to think of what really got me into entrepreneurship and then eventually like
Mm.
Symph. By the way, Symph is not my first company. Symph is like my fourth or fifth company. The,
Wow.
the 3 or 4 before that were failures, right? Or like as we like to say, like they're lessons learned. So in the journey, in my journey. But if I were to take a step back and sit and ask myself, like, why did I end up where I am? I would actually say that there was one thing that contributed a lot to this, and it's actually because I stopped schooling for a couple of years.
Wow.
I think after grade four, our family like traveled a lot in terms of like not travel like for luxury, but kind of like my dad relocated the family. Like we
Mm.
traveled from Cebu to Manila to Mindanao, and we would do construction projects. So my dad was into construction, and so wherever the project is, we would go with. He would go there, and we would go with him. And so that's kind of like my life. And so sometimes you would move mid-year, and I would end up like, and me and my siblings would end up with like a year of no classes,
Wow,
right?
that,
Like so
that
we would.
that must be very hard, no? Parang it brings a little tear to my eye in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, in one way you could see it's hard. In another way, look at it from a perspective of a child, right? Grade five, doing nothing every day. I'm just free and I'm playing around. While other kids my age, have to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have freedom. so so I'm not going to school. But I think it's also key that what we did during those times is like we had a lot of opportunity to do volunteer work where we did volunteer work. I did volunteer work. I also had a lot of time to kind of experiment and actually I started an internet cafe. No, 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 a computer cafe because it didn't have internet. Computer cafe by assembling what do you call this computer parts from broken computers and ending up with a few working ones and set it up in our garage. And that was like when I was around, so this was around grade six. So because you give a grade six child a lot of time, and we didn't have really like television back then. Like my dad didn't like let us use watch television, so I only played with broken computers that I eventually like figured out how to make it work by swapping parts. And then I kind of like opened a computer cafe and run that business because obviously I took all the profits. My parents paid for all the electric bills. So yeah, but so that kind of like those lulls in my life, and I think a total of 3 years, not consecutively, but a total of 3 years, I think gave me a lot of time to experiment. And so that's why when I was in college, I kind of already had this. I was set out to do what I wanted to do. Like I was like kind of my own man, so to speak. Like I wanted to do something and I would do it, as opposed to like just trying to finish school and then after school methodologically, I always mess up the word, methodically finishing school and then methodically entering the workforce, right? So I kind of had like those gap years where I kind of questioned like maybe there are other options in life, and I kind of went in the direction of business.
Cool, cool, no? And you did mention that you had three failed um
Yeah.
startups, no? And
Yep.
I mean, I think the lesson there is to always learn from
Yeah, yeah,
failures,
yeah.
right? To be failures, yeah.
Yeah.
And this time you found success in Symph, no? Given that it's been 10 years running and going
Yep.
strong. And a lot of young entrepreneurs and young IT, they want to have success too, right? That's everyone's goal. So perhaps what makes you successful? What's the criteria to be successful in your own words?
Yeah, so if we describe success, meaning achieving what I've achieved now, like what I want, like achieving what I wanted to achieve, I would say that for me specifically, it's actually going through the process of trying and failing and learning and iterating, right? Many times. Like now, if you would ask me like why am I successful right now, I would say a lot of that I owe to the team in the company. I owe a lot of the success, if not all the success, to these people who just put their heart and soul and work and effort and passion into the company. So I owe that lot to them. Now if I backtrack in the earlier companies and most of the companies that I had that failed, I would say that back then I was much more egotistical. Like it was going to be hard to work with me. I didn't really rely on people. I would say I didn't even trust people. I kind of like wanted to take subconsciously, right? Like take all the glory. Not consciously. Sounds very mean, but subconsciously, I realized looking back, like, oh man, you just wanted everything for yourself and kind of didn't trust people, and so people didn't also trust you, didn't want to work with you. So even though I was quote unquote smart, people thought that I'm smart. I thought I was smart, but then I was really not a really nice guy to work with, and so those really closed doors for me. And I think over time I learned that I got good friends who told me that you need to work on this area of your life. You need to work in your social skills and your empathy and your sensitivity, and I still do. But I think that those lessons over time has really helped me to surround myself with people who are really good and really kind, are really passionate, and then so we were able to form a really good team. And I've learned those painful lessons. So I would say that now I can really say that the team, it's a team and trusting the team that has made me successful.
Cool, no? And speaking about team, right? And since you're the manager as the young CTO of that team, how would you describe your management style?
Ooh,
Right.
management style, I say like that's interesting. So I would say it's case to case, right? Depends on the situation, depends on the project, and
Mm-hmm.
depends on who you're managing. There are people who I say that a lot of my management style is actually inspired by this guy named Dan Pink, where he has a book called Drive, and in this book called Drive, he talks about like three fundamental things that create intrinsic motivation for people, especially in the knowledge economy. So these three are mastery, drive, and mastery, purpose, and autonomy. So mastery is like basically you give people a challenge that they can throw themselves into and they can grow into and they can become really good at. And then autonomy is like about giving them a sense of control. So this is like the opposite of micromanaging. So I would say like I try to give people. I say I try because it's not always the case, but I try to give people as much space and control in their responsibilities at work. So for example, like we have a very strong, flexible work schedule. Like you literally come in whenever you want. We don't even monitor times, right? Like so that's an avenue of control that I can give and autonomy that we can give to our people. And then finally you have purpose. So we're pretty big on this thing. Like we kind of preach, like it's kind of like a religious thing, right? Whereas we say like we empower, that our mission and our purpose is to empower people to make a difference, and whether that difference is whatever the difference is up to you, but and that the scale of that difference is also up to the person. Like we empower people in our team to make a difference, we empower them to make a difference in their lives, in their families' lives, in their community. We empower our clients, to make a difference for whatever business they have. So it's a very versatile purpose, but at the same time we really like take it seriously, so that gives people a sense of purpose. So that mastery, autonomy, and purpose, those kind of like the three fundamental principles that I try to instill my management style. Now, on a case to case basis, there are times when I would say you would use those levers and say give people high mastery, low autonomy if they're just starting on and you need a lot of guidance, but strong sense of purpose. And then there are times when you can then have a person has high skill, they already have high mastery, so then you can give them more autonomy, right? Grant them more autonomy, and just give them a clear vision, a clear direction, and then they can go for it. So that would be like my management style. Like I want to be able to do things that scale. So if I am like always handling things, then I'm not able to build things at scale. So I consciously try to get out of the way, so to speak.
Cool, cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like it sounds very flat in your organization.
Yeah, a lot of our so I talk about tamping. That's for motivation and management style, but for overall culture, I would say we take a lot from the book by Ray Dalio, Principles, which really advocates for radical transparency and I forgot radical openness, but
Candor?
basically, yeah, something like transparency. I forgot like what the radical thing. There's two radicals I think there,
Mm.
but basically in the company we're very very open. In other words, like even our executive level, what do you call this? Chats. So we have like we use Discord, but it's like Slack. So all of our channels except for the clients with specific NDAs, everything else, including like executive levels, are are,
Public chat.
are public chats. Like
Amazing.
everybody, yeah, I can see, including interns, like can see it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite open. So very open. Yeah, that's a very open culture that we have.
And if you may, no, if you can answer, including finances, is that
Oh
something?
no. So there are very few exceptions. So for example, we do have a finance channel, where just the finances in terms of
Mm,
like the finance discussions that talk about people's salaries. That's actually something that we constantly talk about. Like we are aware that's kind of like the only thing we're kind of like not
mm, mm.
very open, but there's usually discussions like might as well we just open it. Like it's kind of like a debate happening right now. But yeah,
True.
that's pretty much what's left. There are like some private chats between just the founders, but that's a very boring channel. Almost nothing happens there.
Mhm.
But everything by default is open. Yeah.
That's so cool, no? And you were saying a lot of autonomy is already happening. So in the current situation, right? How do you feel about remote working given, the current
Oh yeah.
situation? Yeah, yeah. And was that always something with you guys or?
No. So it's quite interesting because yeah, we're very open, but at the same time, we didn't really have the skills, the culture, the infrastructure in place before the pandemic to support remote work. In fact, we kind of didn't like remote work. We allowed remote work as an exception.
Mm-mm.
Like by default, we expect people to come to office, and so yes, we allow them to work remotely, but it's not the norm. Meaning, we would like ask you like why would you work remotely in in a row, like you would have to kind of like
Mm-mm.
justify it, and we kind of discourage it. Like we don't disallow it blatantly, but there's a pressure, right? Like we wanted people to be in the office because like why do we get an office anyway if people are not
True,
gonna
true.
come to work? But then the pandemic happened, and then when the pandemic was coming in, we decided to just okay, we have to make sure that people are safe. So we instituted remote work, and that hurt. That really hurt.
Wow.
And so what we did there was we we did daily retrospectives in the evenings. So we would do team-wide calls with 40 people, Zoom calls, 40 people, and we're just trying to figure out what went well today, what didn't go well, what could we improve, and what confuses and puzzles us. So this is basically crisis management every single day, trying to figure out. And we started off with like internet issues. We would like send off subsidies for people to get like new lines, backup lines, buy them like those pocket whatever,
True,
you
true.
know, we issued like workspace subsidies to get more pleasing aesthetics, and even like subsidize their aircon because it's kind of difficult to work in a hot room, if they didn't have air conditioning and so on. So those things we did early, and then the next set of problems was actually on culture, and we call this the meaningful connectedness. So one of the things that was really like we struggled with was like the feeling of meaningful connectedness, and that's how we transitioned from Slack to Discord, because Discord had like this voice channels where you could just jump in
Yep.
at any time. And so we instituted it that we would just hang out in these voice channels, and anytime people can like say hi to each other, jump on a call without having to schedule a call, right? You just like say, hey, how are you? Hey, what's up? Like you could. That was one of the things that we learned and adapted on the way. But then one of the things that eventually like really helped us was the after many iterations of trying to figure out through these retrospectives of like how to feel like more connected, like from taking selfies in the first thing in the morning and sending it to the group chat saying like like this is me, just I woke up like this. That didn't work for a long time. We ended up with something we call a kick-off sync. So basically, a kick-off sync is at random times during the day. Usually, this is on the hour, like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. But it's actually random times throughout the
Mm-hmm.
day where anybody can say, "Hey, I'm starting work. Um, let's do a kickoff sync." And so anybody who's starting work around that time or who hasn't done a kickoff sync yet would huddle up in a video call. So we always keep video. They would huddle up in a video call, and then they would talk about this random question that was posted the night before. This could be something like talk about your first love, and or
Wow.
talk about like your first time your heart got broken, right? And so people would share these things, and like it's like a mini team
Team
building
building, right?
exercise, yeah, that happens every day for like 20 to 30 minutes. And and you know what, to be honest, I felt that I got to know more people more. I got to know everyone in the company more during this pandemic than I ever did while working
Before.
in the
Wow.
office. Yeah. Because now I would have a kickoff sync, and a new intern would be there. And interns would rarely ever talk to me when
True.
we had in the office, right? Like, CTO is probably the most intimidating person to approach, even though I tried to be like as friendly as possible. They wouldn't like casually talk to me about like who was their first love and how that happened, right? So, but now with that, like we just get to know each other every day, getting to know each other. So this was something that we had to come up with out of necessity, out of the pain point that we felt being disconnected from each other. This was one of the suggestions that eventually got iterated, and this is kind of like where what stuck. So
Interesting,
yeah,
no? I mean, currently I'm both CTO and acting COO, and the pool of questions that you're
usually is
making,
right.
the pool of questions you're making for that, I don't know, is that HR? Is that from
Yeah.
your
So
from
well,
you
it's
too?
Yeah, it's from Lenly. Lenly's our marketing manager. She's also
Mm,
one of the, like kind of like a very, I would say like a cornerstone of our niceness. I would say like chief happiness officer, maybe if there was any.
yeah,
She's very just nice, and so I think she just Googles it, and I don't know. She probably has a list somewhere where she Googled like random icebreaker questions. So yeah.
cool. Moving on, I wanted to ask, how is hiring? I know you are a Google expert, no? Opposite mine as a AWS hero.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Google and AWS, right? How is hiring, especially now? And do you even look at maybe things like certification, or those things? What's top criteria for you to hire
Yeah.
for
My
IT
hi-
specifically, right? There.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My hiring philosophy has always been results based. Like we are not quite heavy. Honestly, we're not quite heavy on certificates and certifications. Although that puts you in front. Like if you were competing with somebody in a hiring pool that we have, an application pool that we have, and you have some certifications, that would be interesting because almost nobody has that. Um, but because very few have that, I would say we heavily rely on portfolios.
Mm.
So we ask people to submit like sample of works, their GitHub profile. We look at the code. We issue coding exams. People answer the coding exam, and then the interview. So yeah, pretty much.
Cool. And this applies even to fresh grads.
Yes,
I think
yes, this
is that
applies.
something fresh grads should build early on in while they're in school.
Yeah, actually, Rafael, like, it actually applies even to interns. So our
Mm.
intern bar actually has portfolios as well, sample of works. We all for any technical position or technical internship, like for example, like a development internship, software development internship, that requires like you have a sample of works as well. So if you didn't have like a thesis or any code sample you could show, we wouldn't even consider you in normal circumstances.
Cool. Speaking about coding, I think this is one of the questions I get, especially for CTOs.
Uh-huh.
Um, do you still code? And what's your stack?
Yes. Yes. So okay, our company, we build websites and mobile applications, right? So most of the people that we have are, I would say, in the back end and front end stack.
Mm.
So they code in Node.js. So JavaScript has sort of like eaten the world.
Yeah, true, true.
We kind of jumped on the hype train as well, and for good reasons. And so yeah, we're going from React on the front end all the way to Node Express on the back end. Now, most of our folks don't go beyond the back end, meaning the DevOps and the CI/CD pipelines. We usually leverage what do you call it, serverless technologies for
Mm.
that. We try to keep it that way. Whenever there is a client that has a requirement of, like, say they have to deploy it on premise, or they have their own CI/CD pipelines, and they have their own infrastructure basically, I usually end up the one like setting up those things. So yes, I do code, but mostly in CI/CD pipelines and DevOps stuff.
I see. And this is because you have very few what you call like infrastructure engineers in this case, because
Correct,
you're
correct.
moving towards serverless.
Yes, yes.
And in terms of percentage, would you say that means maybe just only 20% of your time is coding, or at this point,
Oh,
or like maybe
at
you
this,
can say, early on as the when you were 23 as a CTO back then, and
yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of
Oh no, yeah, you're absolutely.
and until now, no, like has that slowly progressed towards less and less, or is it like equal? Maybe you can describe that
Yeah,
transition.
yeah. Yeah, before I would do all the coding, right? I mean, when it was just the four of us, me, Dave, Dan, there was Kent. So there was probably like five of us in the company, and I would basically, CTO meant main developer,
Yeah,
right? That's
sure, sure,
basically
sure.
that's basically what that meant. And then over time, as you know, as we hired more people, then that became like technical lead. In terms of responsibility, you still like to have the CTO title, even if you're just like six people, right? But your responsibility was really technical lead. And then eventually, over time, as we hired more and more people, we got to 20, 25, 30. Now we're about 50, 60. I would say that in terms of like the actual coding and projects, I would do less than 50 or 40% of my time. Yeah. There are some projects though that I get involved in, and then there's heavy DevOps, then that increases, right? But I would say if I'm trying to also like build up capacity on that side, so then that's because I want to spend less time on actual coding and spend more time, as I said a while ago, looking to the future, 3 to 5 years from now. What are the technologies out there that we should be looking out for, and making those strategic decisions, and then leading the team towards working towards that direction. So that's really what I want to be doing, and I think I should be doing.
Cool, cool. And in line with that, no, this next question is currently, what are you passionate about? I think that falls under strategic direction, right? What your
Yeah,
passion at the moment.
yeah. Actually, I one of the things I'm really passionate about right now is self improvement. Or how self improvement is a broad thing, but more of like I feel like a lot of developers, like once we start working, we are quick to stagnate in the sense that we are not able to learn as fast as the industry evolves.
Mm.
And so I'm really passionate about getting developers to learn more, learn at a faster rate. So, for example, in the company, we have learning programs that we put in where we subsidize. We don't subsidize. We sponsor like LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, Udemy, Pluralsight, all these courses where they can study and learn. So we sponsor those, and then we also what do you call this? We create like learning paths or like sort of career progression. Right now, we use a tool called Progression, but that's basically what it does. Is like it says like if you wanna be a junior developer, this is the topics that you have to know and master, and the values that you have to cover, both soft and technical skills. And then if you want to become like a senior developer, these are the skills that you need to sort of like checklist kind of like achieve. And so we kind of provide a path for people. And so to speak, I basically am passionate about getting a person to motivate them to learn, right? To I feel like so in the opposite of my passion, my main frustration is when I see people that they're contented and not willing to learn or not learning anymore, and distracted with what I would personally, in just my own opinion, say like, come on, it's like a waste of your time.
Mm.
Like you can like you can like invest so much in learning now, and that would make so much of a difference in your life in the future.
Cool. No, I'm, I'm gonna ask, like, ever since now, I've known you quite some time, and you've been very active in the social media space. We are hosting Geeks on the Beach, and
Right.
now I see you daily vlogging and also the CTO Discuss. Is this
Yeah.
part of your passion, or how does that fit into that? What you just mentioned.
Yeah, public speaking has always been a skill and sort of like a norm in my life. I actually I did theater when I was younger, so the stage has been my life. And so now when kind of like the pandemic happened, like that has been stripped away from me, and I said like, oh my goodness, like okay, moving forward, it's just gonna be speaking to a camera like this. So
Yes.
I need to get better at it. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this daily vlogging. I'm gonna suck at first, but I just have to do it. And that's the only way to get better. And so yeah, I do that thing every day. CTOs discuss is I want well, the CTOs discuss thing, and we should bring you in at one time.
Sure.
It's actually we all you notice that it's usually always the CEOs that get
I
interviewed.
totally agree. That's like, there's always like that 30, below 30 for CEOs.
Yes,
And
yes.
and a lot of companies are tech companies. They don't shine a light on the CTO level.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
totally
totally.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that what we want to, we just say that it's kind of underrepresented, and we want to like also, not that we want to, compete, but we just say like, hey, I think there's also this interesting thing that
True.
CTOs can provide a perspective to. And so, yeah, I wanted to put a stage, create a stage for that.
Yeah, and a support system too. CEOs have
Yeah.
that, like the CEO breakfast. Here,
Yep.
for some time, we had a young CTO dinner over Fridays. No?
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
but hopefully you can, now that it's pandemic, maybe you can bring that online somehow.
Yes,
But yeah, I
definitely.
totally agree. CTOs also need to, be slightly recognized. I know we're shy in general, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's hard. It's hard being a CTO at, if you're young, there's a connotation. That's just too young. They don't probably know. If you're too old, then you are maybe not active. You're not a coder anymore. So
yeah, I mean, the world is going to I mean, if it already isn't, the world is going to be very, very tech enabled, tech
true.
integrated, tech heavy world. As Mark Andreessen said, right? Software is eating the world. And so I think a lot of people would benefit from the perspective of tech entrepreneurs and specifically technology officers, right? This
Correct.
perspective, um, yeah, just I think needs to be talked about.
Right. Cool. So now we're actually at 30 minutes in. How
Sure.
uh, time flies. So maybe we end with maybe your last advice to especially the young ones who are either looking into becoming CTOs in the future as well.
Right. So okay, I'll be straightforward.
Yes.
Um, Learn your so don't ignore school. That's the number one thing. I think the best people that I've recruited are those that have solid fundamentals, right? There, I would say there's maybe three kinds of people, right? There's the hackers. These are the people who are really good at self-studying, and we have these people in the company. Really good at self-studying. They didn't learn anything in school. They learned all of it like by googling,
Mm.
hacking things together, like putting things together, copying stuff from Stack Overflow, downloading this open source repository, combining it with this other open source repository, putting it together like a Frankenstein and making it work.
Yeah.
It works, but it's very hacky. Then the second people are very like they're just methodical, like very from school. They're always waiting for somebody to train them. They don't really self study. They just go from one training to another, from one seminar to another. They're just like like waiting for training to happen. I would say most of this of synth people are more of like the hack types of people,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's this third group actually. These are the people who have their fundamentals well. This I think would be the ones who went through the classes that they didn't understand why they had to study C++, why they had to study assembly language, why they had to understand binary, but they still did it anyway. Why they had to go to their data structures and algorithms classes and actually learn those really low level stuff. The way they went to their compiler classes, to their database classes, I understand the inner workings of like how you do your I forgot the binary search or whatever. And they understood those, even they went to those classes and consumed them and understood them, even though we didn't really understand like why they would be useful in
Yeah.
the future, because they actually will be useful. And then so this third type of people are the combinations of that kind of people and the hackers. So these are the people who learned really well in school the fundamentals, but at the same time did self study. So you have to add that. Listen to the go through your school, and at the same time, don't stop there. Augment and build on top of that foundation with self study and constant learning. And I think if you do those two things, right, you will have a good foundation and a good learning habit that will carry on your career for in a good upwards trajectory. I would also say be patient, because
Mm.
um, be patient with yourself. Be optimistic and be patient with yourself. I'm happy that I nobody told me I was dumb when I was younger, even myself. Right? Like I didn't tell myself that I didn't believe that didn't know so much. If I'm gonna look back at me now, I mean at me then, from where I am right now, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you're so dumb. Like you didn't know what you were doing, right? But I just had this. I didn't know that back then. I think that really helped me,
Mm.
because I just would continue and continue from one failure to another and learn along the way and eventually be where I am. So I think I would sum that up in those few things. Get the necessary skills, the fundamentals, get the learning habit,
Mhm.
and finally, don't be easily discouraged. It's going to be a road of lots of lessons and failures and painful stuff along the way. But always keep your eyes on the right side.
All right. All right. Thank you very much again to our viewers. That was our young CTO, Albert Padin, no, of Symph. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom to our young IT professionals and soon to be IT professionals as well. Right? So,
Thanks,
everyone,
Rafi.
thank you also. Everyone, thank you again for watching. I do hope that you, of course, like, subscribe, and click that notification bell below, right? That's always it. Below, with the arrow down.
Yeah, over there, wherever it is.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.